This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
I would like to share with you an original approach to understanding the whole storyline of Megillas Rus, something that occurred to me on the Yom Tif of Shavuos, based on the amazing parish on the Megillah called Meishiv Nefesh of the Bach, Rabbi Circus, who, by the way, was a Rav in Mezhbej. If you go visit the Baal Shem, you'll see there's a shul in Mezhbej, and one of the Rabbanim, who was a Rav there well before the Baal Shem, was the Bach. And the Bach deals with the question of the Marshal. The Marshal wants to know, we know that the reason why Moav has been outcast from our nation, Layavai Moaviv Kal Hashem, is Al Devar Sholai Kidmo Eschem Belechem U'V'Mayim, because they did not bring us and greet us with bread and water when we were coming out of Mitzrayim and passing through their land. So the question is that the women should be usher as well, because the women did not greet us either, and the Gemara says, well, Kol Kvuda Bas Melech Penima. It is the nature of women to be modest in the tents, and therefore they were not required to bring water and bread to Klal Yisrael. Even though the Gemara says, let the men bring to the Jewish men, and the women from Moav bring to the Jewish women, the Gemara says still, Kol Kvuda Bas Melech Penima. The manner, the mode of a woman is modesty. So the question the Marshal asks, but not these women. Could these women say, well, we didn't have to bring water because we're very modest? These women were the most parutz, the most brazen, the most promiscuous of all women. They're going to say that they're exempt, they didn't have to bring water because of their modesty? These women had no modesty. They were the ones who Bilam suggested should try to entice, and ultimately they did entice Klal Yisrael to be mazana with them. So the Marshal answers, that's question number one. And furthermore, the Marshal asks that women are modest in the tent. So what's the big maila of Sarah Imenu that she was ba'oyel? All women have to be in the tent. Even B'nai Smayav are supposed to be in the tent. So the Marshal answers, of course the B'nai Smayav were prutzim, and they went out into the world, and really there should be a taina on them that their women should have brought water to our women, but our women were in the tent. It's not that their women were modest, our women were modest, so they had no one to bring water to. But the Bach in his commentary disagrees with the Marshal, and what the Bach explains, that even though the B'nai Smayav, their women were promiscuous and out, but they don't have to be more outgoing than the men. And since the men did not bring water and bread, the women could say, we don't have to be more outgoing than the men. So even though their women, in fact, were promiscuous, they don't have to be more outgoing than the men. Now, the reason why the women from Moav therefore are usher are permitted is because there is no taina on them that they should have brought bread and water to the Jewish women. Now we know that Megillas Rus was written as a halachic document to sanitize and kasher David HaMelech, and that's why the Megillah ends V'hiyeh taldois paretz hoylid es chetzrayin v'chetzrayin hoylid es ram and v'yishai hoylid es David. So the Bach asks that if the Megillah was written as a halachic document to kasher David HaMelech, then why does the Medrash say Megillah zu ein by Isser v'heter ve'ein by Tumah v'tara? There's no halachos in the Megillah. V'lama nichtavu, and why was it written? To teach me the reward of chesed. What do you mean? There is Isser v'heter, there is Tumah v'tara. It's written as a halachic document to sanitize and kasher David HaMelech. So the Bach says, yes, of course, that's why the end of the Megillah was written. But why was the beginning of the Megillah written? The Megillah, the story, the narrative of the Megillah, why was that written? That was written in order to teach me the reward of chesed, to show us that when Rus did chesed to Naomi, she entered our people. That when Rus did chesed to Boaz, she became the Ima of Malchus. So the question is not that this Megillah has no halacha. Of course it has halacha, but the beginning of the Megillah doesn't seem to have halacha, and the answer is the beginning of the Megillah was written to teach me the schar of chesed. I would like to offer that there is more than just two random parts of the Megillah. A beginning that teaches me the reward of chesed, and the end that sanitizes and kashers David HaMelech. But in fact, these two parts of the Megillah are related and interconnected one with each other. Why is David HaMelech kosher? David HaMelech is kosher because the women from Moav are allowed to join the Jewish people. Why are the women from Moav allowed to join the Jewish people? But shouldn't they have to bring bread and water to Klal Yisrael? Why don't we say they're disqualified like the men are disqualified? And to that the Bach said, because the women are not more responsible than the men. And if the men didn't do it, the women could say, we don't have to be more outgoing than the men. You know where we see this Svar of the Bach? From the beginning of the Megillah. Because the Bach himself writes, you know what we see from the beginning of the Megillah? Look how much Hashem loves chesed and hates those who don't do chesed. But Elimelech ran away from an opportunity to do chesed with Klal Yisrael during the famine. He ran away with his two boys, so Elimelech died, and Machlon and Kilyon died. Rus tried to do chesed to Naomi. She entered the fold, and she became Ima Shamachas. So those who run away from chesed, they are cast away from the Jewish people, namely Elimelech, Machlon, and Kilyon. Those who run after chesed, they join the Jewish people. They are integrated in the Jewish people. The raya is Rus. But let's ask ourselves one simple question. What about Naomi? Naomi ran away from chesed. She followed Elimelech, Machlon, and Kilyon to Moav, running away from the opportunity to do chesed with her fellow Jews. So why did Naomi stay with the people, and ultimately she was instrumental in helping Rus marry Boaz and build the Malchus Beis David? You know, we see from the fact that Elimelech, Machlon, and Kilyon died and were cast away, but Naomi was not. We see the svara of the Bach, that even though men have a chiyuv to bring lechem and mayim to do chesed, but women are not more responsible than the men. And if the men are not doing their job, the women are exempt, which is exactly why Al Davar Shalai Kidmu Eschem is a taina on the men, and it's not a taina on the women. And therefore, because the Megillah begins by teaching me that those men who don't do chesed are cast away, but the women are not held more accountable than the men, and therefore we could say Moav is cast away, the Benois Moav not. Now we could say Ve'ela Toldois Peretz, Peretz Chetzroin, and V'yishai Hoyled as David is kosher, because the raya is, look, Elimelech is cast away, but Naomi is not. And this really gives us one common idea to both the beginning of the Megillah, the narrative of the repercussions of chesed or the lack thereof, and the kashus of David HaMelech. Wishing everyone bracha v'atzlacha and a wonderful day.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.